Good afternoon. On behalf of Viola, Ben's children, and all of your friends and family, we'd like to welcome you to the celebration of life for somebody that has meant so much to so many of us, even those of us that knew Ben for just a very brief time of his life. It's a real show of love and affection to have you all here, and this means a lot to those that are gathered here in Ben's name and gathered here to remember the impact that he's had on so many people and all around the world. So thank you very much for being here today and for participating in this way and showing your respects to both Ben and, of course, to his beautiful family. To the family, on behalf of Oak Ridge Adventist Church, we just want to let you know that this is a safe place and that you have come here to remember and also to grieve, and that your grieving here is surrounded by people who love you, and most importantly, by a God who loves you. And so, in that spirit, we gather here, and I invite all of you to participate today through your smiles and your posture and your words of kindness to this family and to each and every one of us here, so that we can celebrate a life that was really well lived. Really, really well lived. My name is Stephen Merkovich. I happen to be the pastor here at the Oak Ridge Adventist Church, and it was a real privilege and honor to get to know Ben. And I have a few more things I'm going to share a little later on in the program. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But it's also a real honor and privilege to have an opportunity to officiate at a service with Reverend Hewitt here from the church on the corner of 49th and Oak, the Unitarian Church, longtime minister there. And I'm going to invite him forward here to offer up a word of opening prayer. Reverend Hewitt.
Let us join now in the aspiration of prayer. As we seek the inward resources that we need to move meaningfully through life's varied experiences of joy and sorrow, of community and bereavement. At a time when death has come to one whose life has been linked with ours by ties of kinship or friendship, by ties of love, we seek the inward peace of acceptance. We lift our hearts in gratitude for the enrichment that has been ours through our shared experiences and understandings in common causes and endeavors with Ben Ganz in times and places now hallowed in memory. We rejoice that these will be part of our lives as long as those lives shall endure, and a part of all that is forever. We pray that the words and feelings and remembrances we share in these quiet moments may strengthen us in our sympathy and support for one another, and renew our dedication to those underlying and eternal realities which alone give our lives meaning and worth. So may it be.
Stay
Thank you, Gina. That was a very moving piece, in German, no less. Wow. I would like to invite forward Ev Cousins, who will be sharing a poem entitled My Father Dying.
It's been my honor and privilege to have known Ben and Viola, and more recently their family. And one of the very difficult gifts that Ben has bestowed is this gathering of people. And all of you are more than welcome here today. And it is my privilege to share this poem that Rhonda has provided. Now, many of you know Rhonda, Ben's daughter, and she subscribes to the Writer's Almanac with Garrison Keller, and every day they send their members a poem. And on the day that Ben died, even as the family continued their vigil at his bedside, this poem arrived in her inbox. My father dying. Thank you. My Father Dying by Joyce Sutphen. It was hard work, dying, harder than anything he'd ever done. Whatever brutal, bruising, back-breaking chore he'd forced himself to endure, it was nothing compared to this. And it took so long. When would the job be over? Who would call him home for supper? And it was hard for us, his children. All of our lives, we've heard my mother telling us to go out, help your father. But this is work we could not do. He was way out beyond us in a field we could not reach. Thank you.
A little while ago, I was called upon to participate in a service down at Christchurch Cathedral for a person who was a Unitarian and also an Anglican. In our Western world, we are accustomed to sorting ourselves out into different denominations. But in the eastern part of the world, it is quite common for people to be involved in more than one religious organization and to participate in its observances. The Dean of Christchurch Cathedral said in his introductory remarks at that service that this person might have been described as an Anglitarian. Perhaps Ben might have been described as an Adventarian. We gather, though, now in his memory, as people have gathered from time immemorial, when death has taken one of their number, to join in remembrance and give thanks for the time, for the life that we remember, mindful that we are more than isolated individuals, but part of one great reality that embraces us all. As Emily Dickinson wrote so poignantly, each that we lose takes part of us. And indeed, this is true even in a physical sense, for every atom in our bodies has been part of myriads of other living beings before us. The great traditional symbol is that of the tree of life. It's not for nothing that we speak of a family tree, but the metaphor is a far broader one than that. That outstanding music maker, Pablo Casals, wrote, "We are leaves of a tree, and the tree is all humanity. True, but even more, it is all life. The poet Herbert Reed took up the theme, writing, and these are his words, "I am like a leaf of this tree, and one day I shall be torn off by a storm or simply decay and fall, and become a pinch of compost about its roots. But meanwhile, I am conscious of the tree's flowing and sap and steadfast strength. Deep down in my consciousness is the consciousness of a collective life, a life of which I am part, and to which I contribute a minute but unique extension. When I die and fall, the tree remains, nourished to some small degree by my brief manifestation of life. Millions of leaves have preceded me, and millions will follow me. The tree itself grows and endures." This great symbol is a universal one engraved in the human heart, appearing at all times and places. From the Bible, I draw these words from the book of Ecclesiasticus. "In the thick foliage of a growing tree, some leaves fall and others grow instead. So are the generations of flesh and blood. One dies and another is born." We remain rooted in that reality. Whether in our most immediate consciousness the buds are bursting or the leaves are falling. The living and the dead and the generations yet unborn are parts of each other in the deepest sense as we share together this adventure of life upon earth.
Thank you, Reverend Hewitt, for your wonderful reflections on the tree of life and the metaphor and how it reflects on all of our experiences. I am convinced, just in my short time, maybe just shy of 2 years of getting to know Ben, that Ben walked in love and Ben walked in truth. And therefore, in my eyes and in my experience, Ben walked with God. And I want to share a couple of stories and some scripture as to why I feel this way. In John chapter 11, the gospel writer shares a story about Jesus and some of his friends. Jesus has been away out of town and not close to them, but he has received word that his close friend has passed away, his friend Lazarus. And as the story winds along, we find ourselves at the place of the tomb, close by, at hand, and Jesus is being met by Lazarus' family and friends, and they are weeping. And they just know, Viola, had Jesus been there, Lazarus would not have died. And so we pick up the story with Lazarus' sisters Martha and Mary meeting Jesus on the road to Bethany. And it says, Martha said to Jesus, I'm reading in verse 21, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." And Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "Listen, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" And she said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who is coming into the world." When she had said these things, she went and called her sister Mary, and they go through much the same process. And we'll skip down through that story and we'll pick it up in verse 33. And here's where the story begins to connect specifically to my experience with Ben. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. It's this picture of Jesus that connects Ben so closely to the walk of truth and love. In my experience, short though it may be, in the few times that I got a chance to eat Indian food with Ben, believe it or not, that was Ben's thing with me. We went out down on Fraser Street and we went to the buffet, and Ben knew exactly what he wanted. And he knew, and he told me the stories and why he liked the flavors, and he would share with me some reflections on life. And I think he thought I was just a young whippersnapper, and he'd tune in to our live stream here, and I'm outside the box a little bit. And for those of you that know Ben, he's a little outside the box too. And so we connected on this outside the boxness of our experience in life. And so we would chat over some chana masala and over some saag paneer. Yes, the vegan ate some cheese. That was me. And we would chat about life. And I would listen because I knew intuitively that I was sitting at the feet of somebody who loved this world and the people in this world in a profound way. And as a follower of Jesus myself, I was learning how to love the world well too. And somebody who had walked the world as long as Ben had, and had loved the world as profoundly and his family as profoundly as he had, I knew I had lots to learn. And Ben had plenty of stories to share, so I didn't have to talk much. I just sat back and said, "Oh, tell me more." And I would sit and I would listen for the whole meal long, and then we'd walk back to Ben's place and I'd listen some more. And as I listened, I got a sense of this same thing, that Ben would look in the world and he would see the pain and he would feel the pain. And I think Ben's capacity for empathy and Ben's capacity to be in a story was much like Jesus's capacity to be there. And as Ben would share about Africa, about his Australian midwives and the various people that were around and participating in his life, and stories of UBC and travels around Canada and around the world, and stories of his children and his grandchildren. And Ben loved technology. And I think Ben was proud of the fact that he was an older gentleman that knew how to operate his iPads and his iPhones. And he'd want to share things with me and pictures with me. And he'd start flipping through the pictures. Guess who this is? And this. And every time, his heart and his eyes and his stories spoke of love, and they spoke of compassion. And so it doesn't surprise me then that as Ben's life was winding down, that the steady stream of people that I was beginning to meet and understand had been impacted by Ben and by his life was overwhelming. And I thought to myself, nothing could be a more fitting way to pass through this world than to have so many people that you have loved and so greatly affected. And I knew that Ben was being loved in much the same way that he had loved those around him. And so the story continues then in Scripture. And he said to those who were weeping, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Lord, come and see." And the two words in the Bible that comprise the shortest verse in all of Christian Scripture is Jesus wept. It is this heart of compassion. It is this heart of truth and this heart of love that drew me to Ben and draws me to Jesus. It's this profound capacity to love and be loved. And though I knew Ben for just a short time, I felt loved by him. I don't know, whatever that little capacity was and the little bit of storytelling, I walked away from every one of those encounters a better man for it, because I could reflect on the stories he shared, and I could reflect on his wisdom, and I could reflect on Ben's posture in this world, and what it meant to live a good life, and what it meant to love the world around you the best you knew how. And it reminded me of the kind of man I wanted to be, and the kind of empathy I wanted, and the kinds of memories and stories I wanted shared about me. And so Ben, in your memory, sleeping in peace as you are right now, and the last time I saw Ben, he was fast asleep. It's the way he chose to pass through this world, and people all around him with smiles and tears all at once because he elicited both. It's hard to say goodbye. And I feel for you, Rhonda, Viola, family. I know. I can only imagine the immensity of the loss. When you have such a great person, it is reciprocal to the pain and the vacuum that is left. Ben's irreplaceable. No one will replace Ben in your lives. Don't even try. He's a larger-than-life character. He had so many experiences, and they were uniquely his, and he played a unique role in each of your lives. But I want to encourage you today. I want you to raise your eyes and your heart and acknowledge the fact that Ben sought after love and to love this world. He sought after truth. And Ben sought the best way possible to sojourn here. And he left many of us inspired, and I know that he has left you inspired. So, as a Christian myself, and as somebody who saw the face of Christ in the face of Ben, I'd like to close out my remarks here by sharing the remainder of this story, which is the Christian hope. Verse 35 said, Jesus wept, and the Jews said, see how he loved him. Ben loved you. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have also kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, take away the stone, Martha. Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days. And Jesus said to her, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that they have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Whatever life holds in store for us, and whatever is the final climax and eschaton, so to speak, we know and we can rest assured that a life in pursuit of love, a life in pursuit of justice, kindness, and compassion is a life well lived. And it is beyond a shadow of a doubt that I know that Ben's life was a life well lived. At this time, we'd like to invite a number of individuals who have either prepared statements in a remembrance of Ben and or are sharing written reflections from those that were unable to be here or unable to share themselves. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Marley to come forward, and she'll be sharing, I think, someone's reflection that has been sent in. So thank you, Marley. Please come forward.
A little difficult to make no noise when you're wearing motorcycle boots.
Well done, Marley.
Thank you. This is a tribute to Lota Benno Ganz from Kagali, Gasgupta. I was honored when Mrs. Ganz asked me to share some of my memories with all of you. I started thinking about what I could say about Lota Benno Ganz. Great name, by the way. A smile came to my face as I recalled all the great times we had on Farasi Lane so many years ago. You see, I met the Ganz family in Nairobi in 1977. My own family was moving from Saskatoon to Tanzania, but because my school records were lost, I could not go to school there yet. The Canadian consulate had asked if there was a family that could take a 14-year-old girl for a year. The Ganz family said they could. Very brave. My first impression of Mr. Ganz was of a tall man with broad shoulders, a deep voice, lamb chop sideburns, and blue eyes that twinkled. He had quite a presence. He and Lonnie came to pick me up, my sister and my parents, in a white VW van. As an aside, Lonnie looked less scary. After meeting the rest of the family, my parents arranged to have me stay with the Ganses. To make me feel less homesick, we went on a camping safari. The first weekend I was there. Well, there was no way I was sleeping in a tent on the African plains. What were they thinking? What kind of crazy people did my parents leave me with, is what I was thinking. Needless to say, I slept in the van. Not Mr. Ganz. He slept with the wildebeests. Over the next year, I became part of the family. The rhythm of living in an exotic place. I remember a house full of life. Dogs, cats, a goose, German relatives, chocolate cake, motorcycles, parties, homemade mail, and donuts. One of my most treasured memories is the Friday night motorcycle ride into Nairobi to watch a movie. That was something Mr. Ganz and I did together, and it meant a lot. At school, Robert would introduce me as his sister. People would be, huh? We told them Mr. Ganz had 2 wives. Many of you who are hearing this will have had similar experiences. We were the lucky ones to have known him. I was able to talk to Mr. Ganz when he was in the hospital waiting for a hospice bed. It was great to see him via FaceTime. His shoulders weren't as broad, and the lamb chop sideburns and hair were gone. But the twinkle was still there. We reminisced about the good old days in Nairobi. I'm so glad to have had the chance to do that and to tell him I loved him. In closing, I want to say that Lota Benno Ganz was many things to many people. He taught us how to live. That's what I will remember. He was always a teacher. He taught me, be curious, be adventurous, be kind to others, love life, and have a twinkle in your eye. So this is how I will honor his memory, by being curious, adventurous, kind to others, loving life, and having a twinkle in my eye. The world is a little less bright. Miss you, Papa Ganz. Love, me too, which is Kakali's nickname. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marley. What a moving tribute. This time I'd like to invite Liam forward, who will also be sharing a tribute.
This is a letter from Baraka G. Muganda, one of Ben's students at Ikizu Secondary School from 1962 to 1968. Mwalimu is the Swahili word for teacher. Mwalimu Ganz, as popularly known, was a very hardworking teacher. He was hard on us as students to learn mathematics. In fact, through him, I learned to love maths. I used to watch Mwalimu cutting firewood for the school kitchen with amazement. During those days, chainsaws were not so common, so we would surround him while he felled trees. We also loved to see him wearing his canvas, surali ya mpira, pants. He looked different from the rest of the teachers. Ben was a big, tall guy, and Viola was tall but so slim. It was a very nice couple, and some of us, we modeled after it. Mwalimu liked to speak the local language of the Ikizu tribe. He could greet us using that language in addition to Swahili. Personally, I will miss my Mwalimu so much. Until the beginning of this year, we were constantly talking to each other. We would remind ourselves of the good old days of Ikizu. I look forward to the blessed hope when I shall meet him.
Thank you, Liam. At this time, I'd like to invite Joash forward. Joash has some reflections as well.
My name is Joash Gambarage, and my wife Nema and our two boys, Eli and Jonas. We have been commemorating the life of Ben since his passing. We first met Ben and Viola about 6 years ago here at OIC. And when they found out that we were from Tanzania, you can guess how excited they were. As all you now know, that Ben and Viola spent their life in Tanzania, our home country. And they lived in Ikizu, a small village just 7 kilometers east of Mugeta, which is my hometown. And every time I visit my parents in Mugeta and pass through Ikizu, I always remember Ben, I remember Viola. In particular, I remember Ben for a couple of reasons. One is Ben worked in Ikizu. Ikizu is one of the Seventh Adventist schools in Tanzania, and through his legacy there, the school remains one of the top-notch schools in Tanzania until today. Many Ben students became engineers, ministers, pastors, doctors, and this is something that Ben has mentioned so many times to me, that his students were the first students to get an A in mathematics. You can imagine Baraka Muganda, who just mentioned here, who was once the world's youth leader of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is just one of the many successful Ben students. And this is something that Ben has always felt so proud of. I could say more, but I don't have time. And all I can say is that Ben's life is a life well lived. Dear friends, the grieving family, and the church family, there will come a time when God will say, enough. God will draw a line on all this human pain and suffering. Because the Lord says, if I go and prepare a place for you, surely I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. The world is not always going to be like this. There will be a day when everything will be made new. And I can't wait to meet Ben in that glorious morning. And because Ben was a polyglot, he spoke many languages, as you know. I can still think when he wakes up from his sleep and sees me, he'll probably want to greet me in my own language because he found it very melodic. He would say probably, ba, ba, walele, walele, eh. Ben and Viola had been the honorary grandparents to our kids, Jonas and Eli, and please allow Jonas to play a short song in honor of Ben.
Thank you, Joash and Jonas. And thank you for reminding us, yes, that Ben is a polyglot. That was one of the things that blew me away. All right, we have also Marcus, who is going to be reading a statement as well.
This is a letter that was written by my cousin Jonathan about our Opa. It is very hard to choose words that don't fall short in explaining how important Ben was in my life. Just calling him Ben feels strange. For my whole life, he was just Opa. The nature of living on the other side of the country from him meant that the far too rare times we spent together became strong moments that shaped me. My character, personality, and how I define myself came from him. More often than not, to me, he was a voice on the phone, strong, kindly, always asking how things were and how things went. With a laugh I still picture to this day, one you could hear 1,000 kilometers away. And still, imagine it on his face. To call him a role model downplays how important he was to me, and the past weeks and days have been marred by sudden loss of balance as I come to realize I will never hear that laugh or see that smile in person. Just writing these short few words tears me apart. My humor fails me and I feel lost before I realize that one thing I did get from him is his tenacity. If he were here, he'd probably tell me to chin up and face the world and grow a little more. He certainly wouldn't be happy if my studies suffered because of this. I suppose in that regard, the teacher part of him never left. I suppose this rambling and raving might have semblance of coherency to some, but to me, it's the closest I can get to expressing the profound loss I feel, having lost my grandfather, and the loss we all feel, with one less incredible person in the world. But it is not a time to simply grieve. The people gathered here, watching from all over the world, are simply a fractional testament to positive impact Ben had on countless people, and along with everyone else, can celebrate and strive to match it.
The family is keenly aware of the kind of impact that Ben would have had on many people, and so we wanted to reserve a spot or two, depending on how long the first spot is, for some memories or reflections from the audience. I'm going to look for a hand. If not, we're going to move along to the eulogy. Is there anybody that would like to come forward and share anything? Yes, please come.
My story is brief, but it comes from the heart. This is a tribute to a dear friend. My name is Kurt Gottschling, and I've got to know Ben as far back as 1954. I got to know Ben at UBC in the fall of 1954. We had some classes together. Ben had a pleasant smile, and if you look at your program, the first picture on top, that's how I met Ben, with that smile on his face. Here was a young man sporting a friendly smile as he engaged me in conversation with him. As we talked, we found out that we had the same cultural background and became friends instantly. Benno was not only friendly, but he was also bright, kind, considerate, and perceptive of people's needs, and that was expressed already. What impressed me was his ability to do business. If you showed him your wristwatch with worn-out wristbands, he so soon sold you a new shiny one. That was his mark. He was quite a businessman. I can attest to that fact, for I did buy one and treasure it still. Benno was fortunate. He had a home base. His family was living in Mission. My home base was in Prince Rupert. So Benno would offer me to join him at his parents' home on many occasions. On the way back from his home, we would load up his car with fruit, which we took back to Vancouver and shared it. Benno and I spent many evenings together at my place doing chemistry homework. One of the assignments caused us a lot of grief. How do you calculate the normality of a solution? For example, a sodium chloride solution. I knew it at the time, but in the meantime, I have forgotten how it is done. As so often happens, girlfriends enter into the lives of young men. Benno was going to marry Viola. He asked me to be one of his best men. I agreed and returned to Prince Rupert for the summer to work and save up some money for the tuition and living expenses. While there, I suffered from recurrent tonsillitis. The week before the wedding, I had my tonsillectomy. I stayed in hospital for 1 day and then flew back to Vancouver to attend Benno and Viola's wedding. Later, our studies and personal responsibilities took us along different paths. Benno went into education and mission work. I entered into medical school. The rest of the story is history. I love Benno for the gentleman, friend, and person he was. He was a Christian, and that was important to me. I will dearly miss his engaging smile, his great sense of humor, and genuine kindness. They will always be with me to the end.
We have time for one more. If not, I'll invite Greg Ganz to come forward and share our eulogy with us today. All right then, Greg, why don't you come forward?
Hello, family and friends. My name is Greg Ganz. It's an honor to be here. I've been asked by Viola to do the eulogy for Benno. My connection with Ben is we are cousins. His father, my grandfather, were brothers. Before I do the eulogy, I'd like to share some memories that I have just recently of Ben. Ben and I, every time we greeted each other, which was very unusual the way that we did it, most people say hello. Ben would call me up on my telephone. I'd go hello. Ben would go, Mr. Ganz? And I'd reply back, Mr. Ganz. And I loved it. Every time we met at a function, he'd come through my front door. He'd say, Mr. Ganz? I'd say, Mr. Ganz. It meant a lot to me. And now that Ben has passed on, I haven't done that with anybody else before. So I phoned my son in Calgary, and I thought I'd give that a shot. So I phone him up. His name is Brandon Ganz. And picks up the phone. Hello, Mr. Ganz. It's silence. I'm waiting. He goes, hello? I go, Mr. Ganz. No, you've got the wrong number. I said, son, it's your dad, for God's sake. I said, Dad, why are you doing that? Like, I thought somebody was looking for you. So I explained to him what Ben and I did in the past. And from now on, when I call him, it's Mr. Ganz, and he replies back, Mr. Ganz. And I love it. Ben, I own a tool store in Langley, BC, and Ben would come down once in a while and just go through the store and look at different things. And he just got fixated on these flashlights. And I think probably a lot of you people have a flashlight. And he bought 2 the first time in the store. Next week, he bought 4. And then he phoned me up, and I know Viola knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I really didn't pay attention. I thought it was for the family, the kids, and Viola. So he phones him and says, Greg, I need 2 cases, and there's 12 in a case. I go, that's unbelievable, Ben. Really? He said, yep, I need them. I know you're in sales on the road, Greg. Can you meet me around Brentwood Mall? Okay, so bring the cases, I'll bring the cash. I'm like, okay. So we met at Brentwood Mall. He's in a small little car. I pull up in a company van that's unmarked, a white van. I get out. He rolls his window down. Mr. Ganz, Mr. Ganz. And I swear, if the police were in that parking lot, because I got out of my van, I open the side door, it's unmarked. Ben's just sitting there with the window rolled down looking at me. He's got cash in his hand. Awesome. And I take these 2 cases out, and I give him the flashlights, cash, Mr. Ganz, see you later, bye. And that was it. That's great. That's great. I phoned him up that night. I said, Ben, really, what are the flashlights for? He says, Greg, those flashlights have gone all around the world. The people I love, people that have meant a lot to me in my life. He didn't want anything for them. He just wanted to give something to people. He was such a giving person. It was unbelievable. I went through my records. He bought over 60 flashlights from me. That's a lot of flashlights. So they're out there. Recently, I kind of lose track of time, but my niece Amanda and Tim were married in Mexico. And Ben and Viola, it was very nice to have them there. It was beautiful having you both there. And we had a great time. And I remember Viola, I was in a chair out on the beach in the sand, and you come trucking through on the sand with your cane in your hand. I know you don't remember this. And there was no Ben. And I said to Viola, "Where's Ben?" And he's somewhere out there. Ben loved to talk to people, as we all know. It was unbelievable. So that's fine. I said, "Viola, do you want me to walk you back to your room?" No, that's fine. She's got her cane, she's going through the sand, barefoot. Half an hour later, Ben comes the same way. He's got sandals on, he's coming through the sand. "Hey, Ben, how you doing, Mr. Ganz?" "Yeah." And he says, "Have you seen Viola?" I said, "Well, she was just here half an hour ago." "Where have you been, Ben?" And he said, "I met some fine German people just down there." He loved to talk to people. I really noticed that about him. And absolutely the languages that he spoke was just inspirational. I went past him one time when we were in Mexico, and honest to God, I didn't understand any of the languages. I just looked with a stare blank in my face and left, because I couldn't participate in that at all. So it was very interesting. When Ben was at St. Joseph's Hospital, before moving to hospice, my wife, Sean Ganz, had made some chocolate chip cookies to drop off, and we went up to St. Joseph's Hospital, and Ben was in rough shape for sure. And we put the cookies on the windowsill and talked to Ben a bit. He kept falling asleep, and Ben would wake up and he'd look over, and I got close to him and he said, "What's in the bag?" I said, "Those are chocolate chip cookies." So, "Could I have one?" And he had no appetite at all, nothing at all. Absolutely. So my wife got a cookie out, handed it to him. He wanted some white milk with it. It's just a beautiful image I have in my mind right now. He took a sip of that milk, took a bite of the cookie, laid it on his stomach. He fell asleep. He woke up probably within 2 minutes, and his brain did not miss a beat. He picked up that cookie, took a little nibble, back down and went. He was like a little boy. It was beautiful. It was, and honestly, he was not hungry. He was such a giving person that he just wanted to say thank you for the cookies, and it just meant the world to us. My sister, Michelle Kurtzos, was unable to be here, and she just sent me a quick little note. So I'm going to use that technology that Ben loves so much and read a little script that she has sent me. And she has written, "Ben Ganz was an elder to look up to. I appreciate that he kept us in the family loop when my father passed away. To hear all the stories of the travel and families. One thing I admire the most of Ben is he never judged people. He will be missed by myself, my family, hugs and kisses, Viola and family. And for sure, Ben never judged anybody. He was open-hearted to everybody. My last thing before the eulogy, and to me this is a little emotional. About a year and a half ago, my wife and I went over to Ben and Viola's home. You know, it's funny because you can read this stuff and you don't think you're going to get emotional, but it just catches up with you. And we're sitting, I think it's about a year and a half ago, Viola, Sean and I were over at your home with Ben and you, and I think we're having a cup of tea, and your home is full of unbelievable memories. And even when I stopped by to see Rhonda, it's amazing what you have in your home. And there's so much history, your life is in that home. It's beautiful. And then Ben says to me, "Greg, come here for a minute." And I went down the hallway, and down the hallway, Ben took this off his wall. And honestly, I didn't know what was happening. I'm sure the family knows what this is. Do you remember this, Viola? It was on the wall, he popped it off, says, "Greg, here you go." So I just held it like this, and I really didn't know what it was. So then we looked at some other things, and he told me some history of the family. We sat back down. I go, and Viola's looking at me carrying this. She's like, "What is the guy doing?" And I said to Ben, "Ben, this is nice, but am I putting it somewhere else in your house?" He says, "No, Ben, this is for your son." And my son is graduated this year in Calgary from a business degree. And he said, I want you to give this to your son when he graduates. So this was a year and a half ago, so I kept it the whole time. I said, okay, Ben. And it's a horse with a jockey, and to me it's the final jump. It's a winning circle, it looks like. There's nothing written on it at all. It's blank. So I said, okay, Ben, is there something behind this? And he said, there certainly is. And this is the part that's, to me, is unbelievable. He said that your father, my father, Peter Ganz' dad, Joseph Ganz, gave it to Benno when he graduated. It's unbelievable. So I was honored to have this, and I'm even more honored now to have it. So we gave it to our son when he graduated, and I explained the story to him. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill this in with Joseph Ganz to Benno Ganz. I'll get the proper date that he graduated from school. And then below it's going to say Benno Ganz to Brandon Ganz with the date that my son graduated. And it'll carry on throughout the family. He will not be forgotten. He'll always be remembered. I'm going to get a header that we'll discuss with the family, whatever it may be, but it'll be in honor of Ben. And it'll be at my son's house on his wall until he passes it on to somebody else. So it gives me great pleasure to do the eulogy that I know Ron has spent countless hours and days on. I am going to read this word for word. Normally I put fillers in, but I can't because it's written so well, so I'm just going to go with it. And I hate to say this, but I need a pair of glasses, and I think I have to go get them. Think of Earth, the dirt we all return to, the pale roads of Europe packed down by countless steps of refugees from Second World War, the ochre dust of Tanzania, how it turns red mud in the rainy season, caking the tires of a Volkswagen Beetle mirrored in its slipperiness. Red again, Kenya this time, dirt spray off the rear wheel of a motorbike, revving through a tight turn. Canada, a family small plot of land in the Fraser Valley, the fertile ground outside Vancouver where blueberry bushes thrive every August, a trek to the fields to pick berries to freeze for breakfast to come. Think of water, salty Atlantic crossings, the wake of the MV Beaver Bray in 1950 carrying the Ganz family from Bremerhaven, I'm sorry, I have a hard time pronouncing that. How do you pronounce that? Bremerhaven, thank you, to a new life in Canada, across and back again to begin the end of the first sojourn in East Africa in 1960. Snorkeling in the warm Indian Ocean, coral reefs, and exotic fish, the wandering Ottawa River, a breeze kicking up to fill the jib, murky depths harboring trout for a sailor's supper. Think of the storm-tossed waves at the Wickenish Inn, the Pacific reaching toward invisibility. Water is ocean, is river and lagoon. It pools in the marshlands along the Richmond Dike, where a red-winged blackbird just now is calling from a cattail perch. Think of air, wind, shear, crosswind, turbulence. Air says to people, if you want to fly, use a machine. Yet in hot, summer heavy stillness, the hawks find a thermal and, with no effort, rise. Air is thin at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. It has a different smell in Uzbekistan, in Alaska, in Estonia. Air is slow, circles of a remote-controlled glider, the breeze from a helicopter small enough to land in the palm of Ben's hand, is an oxygen tube to make him more comfortable in the last week of his life. Did you ever see how much Ben could fit in a Yamaha saddlebag? That and a helmet was everything he needed, along with Viola riding pillion, of course, along whatever back road enticed them. Together they drove across Canada. They ventured through Europe and India and Japan, sailed between small islands in the Caribbean, hiked the steppe paths of Machu Picchu, and felt the spray of Victoria Falls. Viola agreed to marry Ben only after he promised he would go with her to Africa. Ben had a network of friends and relatives across the globe who would get a call to make up a bed he and Viola were planning to visit on their way out. Is there life after death? Ben enjoyed the challenge of discussing such a question. Think about it. If you want proof of life after death, just look around you at the life in this room. The person sitting next to you has a beating heart. Each one here this afternoon is repaying the best moments they shared with Ben, the last phone calls or FaceTime they had with him, or the last visit. The moments you shared with Ben will keep him alive for as long as you remember him. So carry on, and when you think of earth and water and air, think of Ben at home in each of these elements. Think of the boy in Germany striding the path to his first day of school, the pilot steady at the radio controls as he readies a feather-light glider for descent. Think of the weekend sailor lured by the thoughts of sailing around the world, the man curious about this world, the people yet to be met and places yet to be explored. You are here this afternoon because Ben is part of your memories, whether you knew him for most of your life and got to see and talk with him regularly, or whether you connected with him every once in a while. He played some part in your life which you chose to acknowledge and honor with his presence. We acknowledge in particular his beloved sister, Anna and Inga, who knew him their whole lives, and his dear sister, Wally, who died before him. Friends and family, you are too many to be named. Ben was happy to know you. Thank you for your caring. Thank you for carrying him in your hearts with love. Thank you.
It's now that time in our service where we get to show you a photo montage, a video that the family has put together. So we'll ask you to turn your attention to our screen up front as we dim the lights.
it again.
Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he?
Well, there is more.
No,
Yeah, there is.
I don't know anymore.
Well, you told me once like a longer one.
Oh, not that one.
No?
No.
Okay, so that's over.
At this time, thank you, by the way, what a fantastic collection of photos. Carried me away and really reflective of who Ben was and is in my memories. I'd like to invite Marlies Ganz forward to share a poem entitled The Summer Day.
This is a poem that Viola and Rhonda have asked me to read today. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
I think Ben would have wanted you to know that I'm one of the black sheep of the family. And you can interpret that in so many different ways, and they're all true. We drove each other crazy sometimes because we had the same humor. If you know Ben's humor, then you will understand what that really means. Oh, my. Ben came to every concert I had, even the ones I told him not to come to. He'd come and bring friends. I said, why did you come? Well, why not? I had a script for a television show, and part of it was in Swahili. I looked the part, apparently, but I didn't speak Swahili. So I called Ben. I said, Ben, how do you say this? Rafiki yako ni... Oh, Rafiki yako ni nani? Yeah, you sound African. Okay, well, I booked the role. I had to share with Ben. He was as German as he was African as everybody. I chose this song because Ben, I know, has touched everyone's lives. That's where we're here today. And he just wanted the best for everyone. So, God gives us that love that we pass on. You raised me up. Thank you, Lord, to more than I can be. Memory of my family here, and for Ben. Dankeschön. When I am down and oh, my soul so weary, and trials come, and my heart
it is appropriate that we close this celebration of life with prayer. As we now bid farewell to Ben, we pray that we may build within our own lives a fitting memorial to him and to the great cloud of witnesses of every generation, the true-hearted and the brave, the loving and the wise, who have shown us the way. May we welcome whatever days and years might remain to us, as for a while, brief enough for all of us, we inhabit this earth, think our thoughts, dream our dreams, and build such values as we are able into our lives and the life of the world. And when we too come to the close of our days, may we, with those torchbearers, find a holy and abiding peace. So may it be. Amen.
This draws this portion of our service to a close, and we'd like to invite all the friends and family and all that are here present today to join us downstairs in our fellowship hall, where we will share in some treats. And if you have some things you'd continue to like to share with the family, they'll be available, and you can find your way over to the children and Viola and share any stories or reflections that you like. So please do join us downstairs. And again, thank you all very much for your show of love and support to the family today. We send you and thank you so much. Bye now.
Jungle, the
Say it again.
Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he?
Well, there is more.
No,
Yeah, there is.
I don't know anymore.
Well, you told me once like a longer one.
Oh, not that one.
No?
No.
Okay, so that's over.